Great. Thank you. There's my G&T. You've got a little while to go. Good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. Normally, I'm much more in less friendly environments, let's say. And so it's really nice to be not in the belly of the beast, but in the belly of something that's a little bit more comfortable for me. When I was asked to do a little talk today, I happened to do a talk on Thursday to, does anybody know Associated British Foods? So they own Primark and Ryvita, and they have the same investment people as Fortnum & Mason and Selfridges, so a really far-reaching big industry. And I thought it might be interesting for you if I went through the kind of format that I covered with them, so you know what we are saying to the people really that are your customers. So when you talk about opportunity, hopefully at the end of this, you will realize, oh my God, you guys are sitting on a gold mine and your time is now. And if I leave you with any message at the end of it, it is grab it and do it to the best of your ability. And if I can help in any way, then that is why we exist. I want to start with a confession. The clicker works, yes. My name is Sian, and I am a plastic addict. And unfortunately, I think probably, much as you're all paper, cardboard lovers here, you're all plastic addicts, the same as I am. We are all addicted to this amazing, simple, cheap, convenient, grab and go lifestyle that this incredible material, plastic, has afforded us. Who knew that man could invent a material that lasts forever? And what do we do with it? Do we treat it like gold and put it on a pedestal? No, we treat it like rubbish. We throw it in the streets, we throw it in the ocean. We treat it like the trash that it shouldn't really deserve to be. And now we know what we know things have got to change. So I won't labour on these facts because we've all seen an awful lot of plastic stats now. But this one always amazes me because here we are in the UK thinking we're showing leadership. How great are we? Look at the massive reduction in the plastic carrier bags. So somebody put the number up. It was in one of the Metro things there. The Daily Mail, a lot of backslapping. Isn't it great? Look what we've done with our plastic bag tax. Charging 5p for a plastic carrier bag. Now, big consultation. Do we increase that to 10p? Let's have another consultation about that. And here we are in a world where 60 countries have banned the plastic bag. We have one ocean that unites us all. Why is it okay for us in the UK? We actually still use 4.1 billion plastic bags with all the smaller retailers. The numbers, we only ever talk about the 7 big supermarkets. 4.1 billion plastic carrier bags every single year still being used by us in the UK. What kind of leadership is that? When you've got places like Rwanda and South Korea, islands like Hawaii, banning the plastic carrier bag. This is how much plastic is thrown away every single time. Used once, thrown away. I'm going to come on to single use again because I think it's just such a misconception that it's only a small amount that is actually single use. And this one I love because I love a nice visual, particularly when you're talking to kids. But for me, when you think, here we are, every single year, just the PET bottle alone will go halfway to the sun. So how many times have we been to the sun and back and the sun and back and the sun and back? And here we are in a world where a big, the most loved brand on the planet, Coca-Cola, can pump out 120 billion plastic bottles every single year and have no responsibility for what happens to them when they're in the environment. So I don't know if anybody saw the Queen's speech today. I mean, obviously it was very top line, but if you see the detail of what the government have actually put forward, it's actually quite exciting, and it's actually a real opportunity for everybody in this room because it is finally talking about responsibility. and responsibility being placed on the right shoulders, the people that choose this material in the first place, not the shopper who is forced to buy it. We talk a lot about our oceans, and that's understandable because the oceans, we're very emotional about the sea for all the reasons that we would imagine, and yet nobody is really talking about the soil. And this is where we are planting and growing the building blocks for the next generation. So up to 23 times as much microplastics and nanoplastics in our soil. We know it's in the air. We know that it's not only at the very, very beginning of our food chain in krill, but it's also in airborne little mosquitoes now. Everything there is plastic. So we know it's in the air. We're all in this room. However well filtered this air is, we're breathing in plastic. We're breathing in the nanofibers we're shedding from our clothes. 60% of all materials and clothing is polyester. We know that it's in our water. Unfortunately, even this glass of water here, and we know it's in our soil. And you would imagine that the way that we are, particularly the UK, huge amount of media noise, huge amount of attention, you would imagine that perhaps there was a tapering off, a slight drop in demand for plastic, and we couldn't be further from the truth. Latest numbers coming through from Greenpeace a couple of weeks ago, plastic production set to quadruple in the next 10 years. Where do we think all this plastic is going to go? I don't know if anyone's seen this report. Has anybody read this report? So this is from the Centre of International Environmental Law, independent body of peer-reviewed lawyers based in Geneva, the ones that actually managed to get the Basel Convention amended recently, which was very good news if you care about plastic and toxicity. And that was making sure that within the list of toxic materials for export, plastic is now being added to that list. And they produced this report in January, which shows me that lawyers and often scientists, fantastic at what they do, absolutely crap at comms, because no one in this room has read it. And it is something that's so important for us, for our children, for the next generation, really explaining the impact of plastic on human health from the very minute that it is taken out of the ground to the fact that it really never has an end of life. When people talk to me all the time about the LCA, the life cycle analysis of plastic, and its low carbon footprint, I'm always the one saying, I don't really get it. I don't know how there can be an LCA for plastic, because unless it's been burnt, and we know the toxicity that produces, every bit of plastic ever produced still remains on the planet. So it hasn't had an end of life for any kind of LCA. So this, for us, is the kind of thing that really motivates us. And 2 weeks ago, we were in Amsterdam at the world's first Global Health Summit on plastic. And we took Liz Bonin, who you might know, the BBC journalist who made Drowning in Plastic, and Lucy Siegel, who does The One Show and Radio 4 and The Guardian. We took those guys over. ITV came, and they're making a film about the whole health summit and the fact that Lucy had a plastic toxicity test. We even took Carrie Simmons. I don't know if anyone knows who she is. Big environmentalist. Fortunately, lives at number 10. So we're hoping that we're going to have a little pressure there. And we took them over to witness this incredible summit where for the first time, all the world's health scientists, doctors, environmental toxicologists came together to talk about one thing, and that's the impact on human health, with a massive focus on pregnancy and newborns. And I have to tell you, it was really shocking when you realize what we have done, our generation have done, to the future of everything that lives on the planet, including the next generation. So where's all our plastic waste ending up when we think about recycling? Many of you, well, everybody will know about the China ban, but what is shocking to me is where our waste is being sent. Because as soon as that China ban happened, and I can remember just 2 months before that ban, Michael Gove being asked, so what is the plan when China no longer wants to be the world's rubbish dump? And he stood up and said, we don't actually have a plan. We haven't really thought about it. And because of that, because there was no plan, this is where our waste is going. So in our name, we are sending our plastic waste, our little rinsed out yogurt pots, popping it in the right recycling bin, thinking that's the end of our responsibility. And we are sending it to places that we know have an absolute mismanagement record for waste. And even worse, we're now sending it to places like this, Myanmar, Mozambique. We're sending our waste to some of the poorest people on the planet. And if we don't have the infrastructure in the rich UK to deal with our own plastic waste, then how do we ever expect guys living here to do it? And you will rarely see a graph on any of my presentations, but I got these overnight. And so I thought these were quite interesting to see, because worryingly, in August this year, there has been a massive increase in plastic waste export, which tells me that here we are, nearly 2 years since the China ban, nothing is changing. In the UK, we recycled 9% of our plastic last year within the UK. In the US, it was 4.4%. Everything else was either exported or burnt or landfilled. So imagine by some miracle in the UK or even in the US, we doubled the rate of recycling to 18%. So it just shows you how much plastic waste, we have no way of dealing with it. And some of you may have seen this, which I thought was really interesting, that Biffa, one of our biggest waste management companies, actually finally being taken to court and fined for the kind of waste that they were sending abroad. And this is why China said they no longer wanted to be the world's rubbish dump, because this is what we were sending. There's a fantastic documentary on Sky, I think it's called Dirty Business, which is a real expose. And you might have seen Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall going into the Malaysian jungle and finding 20-year-old container loads just dumped, Haringey County Council recycling bags still intact. So this is, for me, the worst of waste imperialism. And I'm really ashamed that this is happening in our name. And I think what plastic has done for us, this incredible lightweight, super flexible, adaptable material, it's been one of those things that has really enabled this massive ramp up in hyperconsumption. So when people say to me, and a lot of journalists will say, why does plastic get all the media attention? Surely it's the climate crisis. That's the big thing that we should all be worried about, which is absolutely right. But in some ways, plastic is the gateway to that, because plastic was the thing that actually enabled this ramp up in hyperconsumption. And you would imagine that something would be changing faster. And I'm sorry about this picture, but when I talk to the plastics industry, I like to leave it up for as long as possible to make them really uncomfortable. Because go on a train, go into a cafe, get on your little EasyJet flight, ask for a cup of tea. How many bits of plastic will you get given? 4 or 5 for a cup of tea. It's like nothing has changed. And this is the world that we live in, which is all words. Plastic pacts and policies and pledges and promises and the WRAP plastic pact. All of it is words and very little action, and all of it is taking this problem and shoving it as far ahead as possible, thinking, well, I'm not actually going to be brand director, CEO, whatever, by that time, so I'm not actually going to have to deal with it. And these things, for me, are the weasel words of our decade, and these are the ones that, when you are an addict, the first thing you have to do is look in the mirror and you have to start telling the truth. And I fear that right now we're in a place where industry, some politicians, are hiding behind these words. Because when you say, I've made it out of a recyclable material, which somebody, sorry to not Coca-Cola incessantly, but they're my bugbear right now, but because the advertising that they're doing right now, somebody might have seen it, massive press campaign about plastic bottles going around in circles. Complete BS, misleading greenwash for people, because they might make it out of a recyclable material, but who's recycling it? 9% in the UK? Who are these recycling fairies? I've never met them. Recycle plastic. We know that's not the answer, because plastic is not a material that naturally will go from one bottle to become another bottle. It just doesn't happen. So alluding that this is what is happening to the 120 billion bottles every year is really not right. Ocean plastic. Why are we glorifying something that shouldn't even exist? So when people bring out a bottle and say, oh, it's made out of ocean plastic, and then what? It's just one step further from the bin, the incinerator, the landfill, back to the ocean. All we've done is just delay it by one step. It's not the answer. And this word, single-use plastic, where we think that single use is something that's like a drink stir or a coffee cup or a straw. So we're picking off one by one these little tokenistic things, when the reality is this clicker is never going to be another thing. You know, the soles of my trainers, the biro in your hand is never going to be another thing. So my provocation is, all of these things are single use. If they're never going to be another thing, then let's tell ourselves the truth and not hide behind words. I love this quote, which I do not lay claim to, but this whole thing of recycling being the fig leaf of consumerism, it's the guilt appeaser. It's the thing that makes us feel better about doing something. So we founded A Plastic Planet, which is a completely different kind of organization, very pro-business, 3 years ago with one goal, myself and my co-founder, Frederica, to just ignite and inspire the world to turn off the plastic tap. Because when you've heard all of those facts, you guys know, but many people don't. Hopefully I have burst that little recycling bubble of saying that is never going to be the answer. The only answer is that we need less of this toxic, permanent material in the first place. And we started focusing on this category because for us, this felt like the least excusable, the least defensible. Because for food and drink, which is so obviously something that is very temporary, you know, I'm buying the thing inside, I'm not buying the packaging on the outside. And now we all know what we know. The shopper is constantly going shopping and having to fill a basket full of this indestructible material, popping it in the recycling bin, and in the last 12 months, the scales have fallen from our eyes to realize, and it's not really even being recycled. So wouldn't it be incredible, we thought, if you could just have choice? So we started our first campaign, saying to the supermarkets 2.5 years ago, we just would love the choice to shop in a plastic-free aisle. Wouldn't it be amazing to be able to push a trolley, buy all your meat and your fish and everything, your fruit and your veg, but without plastic? Because right now, it's almost like it's a human right that's taken away from me. I can buy fat-free, dairy-free, whatever free. You know, there's so much choice in the world. I can choose what sex I want to be today, but I can't choose to buy plastic-free. 98% of anything in a supermarket is wrapped in plastic. It took us a year, and in that time, Blue Planet 2 happened, so there was a lot of waking up, you know, in society and industry, a lot of pressure on the supermarkets. Every supermarket boss met with us in that first year. No one had any intention of doing anything about it. And then finally, we met these guys who run a chain of 84 supermarkets in the Netherlands, and we opened the world's first plastic-free aisle. And on that day, extraordinarily, I think I did 55 media interviews in 24 hours, and that was CNN and Washington Post and New York Times and the Chinese television station, the Japanese, people came from South Korea, obviously the BBC and Sky. And it was, you know, of course we have an amazing comms team, but also it was because it was a symbol of hope at a time when the public were thinking, oh my God, why are things not changing fast enough? We know now. And yet still, I'm being forced to buy all this plastic packaging. So here was an aisle opening with just 700 product lines. It's amazing how fast things have changed, to give customers actual choice to buy plastic-free. And then this is another one that we did last November that some of you may have heard about because it's a little closer to home. And this is in Thornton Budgens. And I love that it's the affordable supermarkets that are making the change happen. And Andrew Thornton, who owns the franchise of this store in Belsize Park, said, can you just take over my supermarket? And gave it to us, really. And in 10 weeks, we took nearly 2,000 product lines plastic free. And you can see here things like, this is bacon. That was the first bacon that has ever been plastic free. Obviously a huge amount of just taking the packaging off that fruit and veg aisle. But lots of different materials we introduced. We're still working in this supermarket. So this is like a live lab now. Open source. Every supermarket boss in the UK has been in. We've had lots of people, Sobeys, you might know, 1,600 supermarkets in Canada. They flew a contingent over to come and see, and they want to adopt some of the practices. So it's really been a catalyst for change, of showing people that we don't need to wait for a new material. They're all out there already. We just need to start using them. The best thing that I love about Thornton Budgens is we've also got a business case, because that guy's supermarket is up 4%, top line, bottom line. So for him, it hasn't just been a nice to do, a good to do for the environment. It's actually been really good for business. He's won every grocer, green retailer of the year. He's won all of these different awards. He's actually in Canada, I think, this week, speaking at some big industry sustainability conference. I mean, he's been amazing at grabbing it and working it for him. And I am so glad that he has shown his customers that doing good can give them the choice, but also he's shown industry that it can also be good for business. So of course, Budgens, owned by Booker, owned by Tesco, for us it's a Trojan horse to really demonstrate what change can be. So this is what we do to accelerate the pace of change, because this is the only reason we exist. And you don't know much about my background, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. I am the furthest thing from an eco-warrior you will ever meet. I am a massive plastic sinner. I co-founded and ran a skincare brand over the last 10 years, so you cannot imagine how many plastic bottles I have pumped out into the environment. Didn't even think about it, was not on my list. So I know how hard change is. But I also know now, for doing what I'm doing for the last 3 years, how essential it is that we change faster than we are now. But because I'm an entrepreneur, I understand the power of business. I believe in the power of business. So for me, I look at it almost like a sandwich. You've got government at the top, and we do a lot of work with government, but oh my God, they're so busy with the B word. Trust me, in 50 years' time, we won't even talk about the B word, but we will definitely talk about the P word. Then you've got the customers at the bottom who are completely disempowered. They would just buy what they are sold. Let's sell them something different. It's really that simple. And then in the middle, you've got industry, and that's where I think we can really put the squeeze and ignite and make things happen. So legislation, taxation, igniting business from within, open source knowledge, giving the public the choice. It's really that simple. And then this other thing I feel passionately about, which is taking sustainability off the forest floor. Why should it be this knitted armpit, hairy sandal thing that only the hippy dippies are attracted to, when actually the most premium thing, the most luxury thing that we can possibly do is create something that doesn't harm the planet. So when we talk about new laws, and this takes me back to where is our waste going, this is one of the things that we're doing right now. And this is asking government, and we have 40 cross-party MPs, asking government to place an outright ban on the export of our plastic waste to developing countries. I feel we are getting closer, and only last week, I don't know if anybody saw, but BIFA actually came out and said they want there to be a ban on the export of plastic waste, so that we deal with our own dirt within our own shores. Because I know if that happens and the plastic waste starts building up, all 66% of it that we're currently still shipping abroad, we will deal with it, and we will turn off the plastic tap. And you can imagine if we're doing that, then what are people going to use? Because we're not talking about packaging free here. We're just talking about plastic free. So the opportunity is amazing. We have to create this level playing field. Plastic is the most subsidized material in the world, from the most subsidized industry in the world, of course, the fossil fuel industry, from us, the taxpayer. So we have to have a tax. And I know, we really lobbied the Treasury a year ago for the autumn budget and pushed for there to be a plastics tax. And there was a little bit of a fudge and a compromise of if there's 30% recycled content. I don't believe that's the answer. So we're pushing for a tax on plastic, whatever its content. Plastic is plastic. create a level playing field for every material out there. We do these things that we call plastic hackathons. And a year ago, we did one with Unilever. We like to work with the really big guys so that we can get scale happening fast. And we did a project with Unilever to ask them to focus on 46 billion plastic sachets they produce every single year. Majorly for developing countries, because it's the way the big industries, the FMCGs, are entering these new developing markets. We all know where those plastic sachets are going. So we had a full-day hackathon. It was funded, Case there, who's the head of home care, funded to the tune of 100,000 euros, whatever the winning idea was going to be, that they would have a little bit of welly behind them to make this happen. And I'm excited to say that by the end of this year, we will have the first trials, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be paper, of a material to replace 46 billion plastic sachets. And if Unilever can do that and make that change, imagine the leadership that's going to show for everybody else. Because the plastic sachet, for me, it's like this invisible use of plastic. Nobody even thinks about it. We think about the straw, but what about this stupid sachet? It shouldn't exist. Does anyone know about TerraCycle Loop? So this launched at Davos earlier this year, and it's another project that we're involved in with Unilever. And TerraCycle Loop, TerraCycle are one of the recycling organizations, and they have got 8 out of 10 of the world's biggest companies to trial this. It launched in New York in May this year, New York and Paris. It's coming to London. And this is a glimpse into the future for me, because this is about a new way to refill. So imagine Amazon and your milkman had a love child. This is what Loop is. So it's simply that Häagen-Dazs ice cream, for example, that Häagen-Dazs ice cream, that is not now a plastic tub that just goes in the bin. It's a stainless steel thermo vessel that you don't even own. So it's delivered to you in your Loop tote bag. You pop it in the freezer, you have your ice cream, you rinse it out, you pop it back in the tote, because it goes back to the manufacturer. So this is a big wave of the future. Tesco, Carrefour, Target in the US, they're all getting on board and starting to trial these things. And the one that we're working on with Unilever is this. So this is Unilever's new Deopod system, where the only thing, it's a permanent bit of packaging, it's made out of stainless steel and aluminium, and the only thing that you will ever replace every single month is the bit that you've actually consumed, which is your deodorant. And my big pressure right now is getting them to make this plastic free. Because of course, they're using stainless steel and aluminium, which is fantastic, and it feels great in your hand, and it's beautiful, and it looks like something Apple would have designed. And then they're saying, oh yeah, but we're going to have plastic inside it, and the refillable bit is going to be delivered in plastic. And I'm like, no, you cannot do that. You've got to use something from a tree. So we're having big discussions with them right now. But you can see, 1 billion people use a Unilever deodorant. 1 billion people. They own 50% of the world market share of deodorant. So if we can make change happen at this kind of level with a mass market everyday product, that's really exciting to me. I don't know if any of you have seen our plastic-free certification mark. So we launched this at the middle of last year. We have some 100 brands and businesses, and this sits on the front of pack. So this is nothing to do with those, forgive me, but slightly nonsensical recycling symbols on the back of pack that industry have paid millions for over the last decades to now realize that nothing was happening with recycling anyway. I think you should all get your money back. So this mark sits on the front of pack because this is not an industry mark. This is a shopper mark. It's a trust mark. And it tells us just one thing. This pack is plastic free. So we have things like Teapigs, we have Percol Coffee, huge number of brands and businesses are adopting this because plastic free is a reason to buy now. And why would you hide that on the back of pack? It has to be on the front of pack. We also have this as a certification mark for materials. So we have Swanline, who have already applied to adopt this mark so that they can use it in their marketing materials. So it's that little tick of reassurance for anybody that is using your material that it has been certified as plastic free, because we all know plastics are so insidious now, they're hidden in everything. And we also launched this mark, which is working towards plastic free. And I love that you've got, I think it's the Oval Cricket Ground in your little fold-up thing, because we launched this in May with the Soho House Group, which is a very prestigious group of private members clubs and hotels, with the London Evening Standard, with Design Miami. And I met a couple of weeks ago with the board of the Oval Cricket Ground, and I'm seeing them again on Wednesday because they want to adopt this mark. So this mark is adopted by industry to really tell their teams, their suppliers, that they are working towards plastic free. Because no industry, no business will ever be plastic free. It's an impossible task. It's not like a product. A business cannot be plastic free, and we have to preserve those words. So this is symbolic for people to say, we're on a track. We were on the plastic path to hell, and now we're on this track. We're also launching a resource library, and this is going live by the end of this week, which is very exciting for us because this has been a whole year of work. Because it's so evident to us that designers, brand manufacturers, packaging guys, they're desperate for information. Everybody is trying to move out of plastic, but they don't know what are the pros and cons of any other material. Because when you're using a resource, there's always a pro and a con. We know that. But everybody is simply selling you something. So we have developed a resource library, which is free to be included and free to access, that covers all the different materials from algae to cardboard to metal to glass to everything that is plastic free. And then one of the things that we did here, I wonder if that's going to, oh, the video doesn't work, does it? No. Oh, can you press it from there?
Try.
No.
No.
No. Okay, no worries. Well, that was a really great reveal video with the famous Ross the Boss from Swanline in it. So I'm really sad not to show you because that is going to be, that's Plastic Free Land. So this is a physical manifestation of our resource library that we launched at the Packaging Innovations Trade Fair in September this year. We had 5% of the floor space. We had 10 different stands within there that we curated, which were all plastic-free materials that each took a stand. 5% of the floor space, I think we had 65% of the foot traffic came to our stand. It was by far the busiest stand of the whole show because people are desperate for plastic-free solutions now. We will be at the NEC at Packaging Innovations again. I think this time we'll probably be 6 times the size because we have so many people that want to join us in plastic-free land. So, my belief is businesses and brands are going to lead this change. And right now, it's not, we work a lot with great little brands, challenger brands. They're doing the right thing from day one. They're going plastic free already. We can't wait for that. It has to be the big guys getting on board now. It's fascinating to me how quickly this has happened. You know, one of my previous businesses, I actually had a brand creation and packaging design agency. And at that time, the more packaging layers you had, particularly in the beauty market, the more luxurious it was. And in a nanosecond, this has happened. Packaging now equals waste. And you could see how fast, how high that bar, every day the bar seems to be higher for what the public are expecting now. And this quote, some of you may have seen, it was in the New York Times when Alan Jope took over as the CEO of Unilever. And it's just fantastic because I know the PR people, when he came out with this line, nearly killed him. I sometimes wonder if we're in the branded litter business. But I thought it was fantastic because to have that kind of honesty at a time where everybody else is really, there's so much greenwash out there, they are. You will see Unilever products everywhere right now. Every beach, every landfill, it's packed with their products. So they have to do something about it. So the opportunity for innovation here is extraordinary. And one of my mini campaigns is this. I found out the other day what the word consumer actually used to mean. And it's derived from a 15th century word, which doesn't mean what we think it means. It means to squander or to waste. And it's quite symbolic to me that we use that word all the time. How many times has it been used today already? And I'm trying to wean myself off using it. Now I know it means to squander or waste. And we don't even talk about our audience, our shoppers, our public as consumers. We call ourselves consumers. We refer to, but what about me, the consumer? And we've got to stop that attitude because really what we want to be as citizens. Because citizens, it's about responsibility and belonging and not just about squandering and wasting. Because I don't see this as a shopper problem. Since when did it become the shopper problem? Since when did the burden of responsibility go on her shoulders or his shoulders just because he put it in the wrong bin, perhaps? I don't even see it as a waste or a litter problem. I think this is nothing but a production problem. And this is what we've got to change as fast as we possibly can. So for me, when we talk about plastic, this is the new language now. Because coming like a train is going to be human health and the plastic impact. Trust me, it is coming. And it'll be in the US, but the first lawsuit about plastic and the impact on human health is going to happen, because we're going to go very quickly from the Queen's speech today, where we're talking about 100% responsibility. If you choose a material, you are responsible for its collection and its recycling, its end of life. We'll go from that responsibility to culpability and then to liability, because that's just how it goes. And when people say that plastic is the smoking of our generation, then we know exactly how that happened. And we're right at that stage now, where the government has been resisting admitting the impact on human health. And as soon as that crumbles, liability is going to come with it. And this is one of the things that gives me a huge amount of hope. On August the 19th this year, the 200 biggest business leaders in the world got together to redefine the purpose of business. And many of you may be aware, Milton Friedman in the 1970s, he actually came up with the original definition of business. The purpose of business was absolutely singular, and that was profit. To create profit and reward shareholder value. And these guys, you know, from Jeff Bezos to the Apple guys, everybody got together and they redefined the purpose of business, and profit is now number 5. And ahead of that, you've got equality and community and the environment. All of these things are now considered more important than profit. And if we can take that from being just words and more platitudes, and it's what people want to hear, but if you can actually make the 200 biggest businesses in the world start to behave in that way, then we're really going to see some change. Because when I grew up, I had this book. I really wish I had it now. And it was called The Book of Tomorrow. And in that book, there were flat screen TVs. And we didn't even have a TV, so I couldn't even imagine that this massive cathode ray tube thing could ever become a flat screen thing. And people flew around in little glass bubbles, and there was this whole thing called the Jetsons. And that was my future dream. And it was bright, and it was fair, and it was equal. And now you look at what our kids dream of, and they dream of climate crisis. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be part of the generation that made this mess and then didn't act fast enough to try and do something to reverse us out of it, fast enough to do something to fix it. And to do that, first we have to reimagine a new future, because our kids now have something called climate stress. They worry that they have to go and strike because what's the point? They don't have a future anyway. So we have to work with them, and we have to create this new future dream of what their reality can be, as bright and shiny and equal as my dream was at the time. And this final quote gives me a lot of hope as well, because I can feel this in everything that we've been doing for the last 3 years. The pace of change has never been this fast, and yet it will never be this slow again. And I can absolutely feel that now, that it's been like we've been pushing, it's something uphill, and it might not be a tipping point, it might be a rounded top, but we're right now at a point where things are going to start to move a lot faster. And you guys are going to be the ones that should need to grab this opportunity now and benefit from it. Any of the tools that you can give us, we are up for it. We are here to help you, because I cannot tell you how many initiatives I'm working on right now where the answer is the tree. So everything is there for the grabbing right now. And I hope that you are coming away from this conference feeling like, yes, there might have been some dry slides about Brexit, But trust me, right now, Brexit is going to be the smallest of your problems when you're faced with the opportunity that you're going to have with everything that is happening with plastic right now. So thank you for being in the right business is my big message to you. And keep growing those trees and keep making those cardboard cartons. And believe that whatever you think you are, however powerful you are in your own business, what I have learned in the last 3 years, 2 unreasonable women started this campaign. And for some ridiculous reason, we're now asked to speak at the UN and we get involved in public affairs and trying to make new laws and all of this stuff. And it's taught me one thing. Each of us as individuals, we have so much more power than we ever think. Thank you.